Hey everyone, and welcome to this summer class here at Lake Tahoe Community College. This is Anthro 102 Cultural Anthropology. I'm your instructor, Dr. Scott Lukas, cultural anthropologist by profession. Do a lot of research in the world of pop culture, as you may have known about if you've taken any of my classes in person or online. This is a fully online class, meaning we don't meet in person, so we work just on a computer here using our LMS, our learning management system called Canvas. This is going to be a brief video where I just take you through what this class is going to be like in the summer. The main reason for doing this, and there are other videos on the website here on our Canvas site that you can watch that express how this class is over the full 12 weeks. The key thing about this class is that it's going to happen over 6 weeks. So this is really important to know because in the summer, the good news is you get to get a class done in half the time as normal. Our regular fall, winter, and spring terms are 12 weeks total, 11 weeks of instruction, and a final exam week. In the summer, just because of the compressed calendar, we only go 6 weeks. So the good news is you get it done quicker. The bad news is if you start off slow, if you miss the first week, you've missed, a ton of the class already. So kind of the first thing to mention in this class for the summer term is that you really have to pay attention to all the deadlines. You have to see when things are due, typically at the end of the week. Check the due date on here because sometimes those dates change. And then you just have to be aware that we move through the material in a really super quick manner. So really what this means is you can't fall behind and you can't miss work, because if you do, the best thing to do is to drop the class just because you've fallen behind and missed so much material. What essentially I had to do then was to take these 12 weeks and compress them by half. So again, we're doing 2 times as much material in the summer as compared in the fall, winter, or spring quarters. Very important distinction, because I think a lot of people take a summer class and I think it's going to be just like a 12-week term class during the year. It's not the case. We're going to go through how this works out, because one of the things I had to do obviously was to compress the material. So what I do basically is in a traditional 12-week term, you would have weeks 1 and 2. In the 6-week term, I take weeks 1 and 2 and I make that week 1 in your 6-week term. So to make this the easiest without getting too crazy, I'll take you through the Canvas site here. And I think it's fairly intuitive, but just look at this, watch this video obviously, and if you are, that's great because you have I think a head start in terms of understanding this class. So definitely in your first week of the class, on the first day, that Monday really, I would dive in and look at the material. Different ways you can navigate this class, and this will look a little bit different just because of my instructor view. But there are modules that you can click on here. So if you want to jump to week 1, you can at any time jump on any of these tabs. They're like buttons, and that'll take you through the content area in the class. I like to say the easiest way to do it is to click on the modules right here on your top left. It should be your second or rather third one down from home. At any time, if you want to see the syllabus, click on the syllabus. This has all the class information. It's going to have your grading information. It's going to tell you about all the work that is due. So you have all these quizzes, discussions, and then you have a final assessment, and that is also going to be detailed in here. There is a very important warning in this class is I don't want any AI work in this class. And what can really happen is if you use AI work, if you use AI at any level, I'm hearing more from the AI bot than from you. So I'm not going to accept that. You might say, well, how do I know it's AI? There are detection programs, but I'm looking for a particular style of writing. I want you to express how you feel about issues. So use I, the first person, etc. And I know you can go into ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT for academic work. I use it for fun sometimes. Maybe you have the same use. I'm not against the use of AI, but I don't want you to throw the discussion questions into AI, have it spit something back, and you put that on the website, on the Canvas site rather. The thing I don't want is abstract regurgitation of the materials. So if we're discussing, for example, in week 1, cultural relativism, which is a perspective you take to have tolerance about other cultures, I don't want you to go into AI or get a definition off the web and throw that in for your discussion work. I'm not going to accept that. In the first week, I'm going to be generous and say, okay, please correct this, change it, and I won't deduct points. After that, it's just going to be zeros, an indication that the work didn't fulfill the requirements of the assignment. So this is not to be super strict, but it's to really help you develop writing skills. I started my college career as a music major, then took an anthro class, loved it, this exact class, cultural anthro, and then did 3 degrees in cultural anthropology. So I want you to use your skills to develop writing, to develop an ability to assess culture, to understand culture, and to write and reflect on it. Even if you don't become a cultural anthropologist, you can take a trip somewhere and better appreciate the culture, understand the challenges of learning a language, of learning the local customs, eating the food, overcoming challenges of culture shock, which is that feeling of alienation that you feel when you visit a culture that's strange or different from your home culture. And by the way, I realize that all of you come from all parts of the world. I've had students from Tibet. I have students from China, from Japan, across the US, Canada, different parts of Europe. I'm trying to think if I've ever had Australia or Oceania, but all across the world. So sometimes if I talk about a home culture being the US, I don't assume that you're all from the US, nor do I assume that the US is like the dominant culture. I mean, it's very powerful, but I think the US has a lot of improving to do in terms of relations, actually, between people of different ethnic groups and cultures. If you want to look at this information, it has all our campus information that may be helpful to you, student resources. By the way, in the summer, I don't do office hours. Campus services are open. It's a limited basis. So if you have to go to campus, check the LTCC website if you're local, just to make sure. I know sometimes in the summer we would close early on Fridays, for example. So you just want to make sure that the office you're looking for, whether it's counseling or veteran services or whatever, equity, is open and what their hours are. If you're non-local, of course, you're doing everything virtually. There is online tutoring and online counseling available if you're ever interested in that. So here's the course schedule at the bottom of the syllabus. We're going to go through this again. I'm taking those 12 weeks, compressing into 6, half of the content or half of the time to do all of the content actually. So I'm doing that by saying 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, etc. We'll go through that in the modules. It'll make more sense. That's the schedule. And then the good news is Canvas is very redundant when it lists information. So in this case, it's listing everything that's due and the date that it's due. Again, I'm recording this in 2025. If you're watching this in a subsequent year in the summer, just check the dates. But at least for this year that I'm recording it, it's showing you here that everything is going to be due at a particular day and time. And so it's kind of good to see when this information is populated here, because then it shows you everything that's due. If you need to put this on your calendar, there's a really good calendar function here on the left side of Canvas. Notifications are something you control. You're going to do that under your account settings. So I don't have control over that. I send out announcements, notifications, but I can't control which ones you receive, how you receive it, when you receive it. That's on your end, actually. It's just a setting that you have to set up under your account setting, under notifications. And then you could also look at your calendar. If you're taking more than one class, it's pretty useful. It can populate it with your different classes at the same time. And indeed, some LTCC students take a bunch of summer classes because they want to get their requirements done, or they need a few courses like this one, which is a GE or general ed class for our graduation requirements. And if you've graduated recently or will be in our last commencement, congratulations, of course. So this is the syllabus information. You can use some of these other tabs, and by the way, in your student view, some of these will be hidden. You don't really have a use for a lot of these, like files or chat, etc. If you click on quizzes, that's fine. That has your weekly quizzes, but the place to find every single bit of information I really recommend is your roadmap, your true roadmap to move through this class. So you want to click on your modules. That's right here. That should be the second or third one down from the top tabs. Click on those modules, and the information at the top is kind of repeating what's in the syllabus. At any time, you can minimize the menu by just clicking that little arrow there. It just makes it helpful if you only want to look at the information. So you have basically 6 weeks plus finals. So you can look at all this and kind of get that roadmap, as I mentioned a minute ago, to see what's due every week. this is laid out in pretty logical structure. So the structure is I have the topic listed right under the heading that is the week. In this case, we do 1A and 1B. Again, that corresponds to weeks 1 and 2 in the 12-week term. In 6-week term, I do 1A, 1B to make sure the concepts kind of line up neatly. But you're doing twice the amount of work again in the summer in 1 week of the class. So what I have here are learning objectives. At any time, you can click on this. And what happens when you click on that, it takes you to the content page. And then if you want to continue to keep moving along on that content page, click the next or the previous button. It's really handy. By the way, the textbook for the class is free, available to you freely online. You don't have to pay a cent for the textbook. It's called Perspectives, an Open Invitation to Cultural Anthropology. So I hope you enjoy the book. I think it's a fairly decent book. This will always have the readings for that week, and you can click on this. You can also do it as an e-text if you want to do any of that kind of stuff. So again, click through the next and previous to neatly move through the module, and you can kind of do it in the order that I intended. Let's jump back though to the modules because this is easy to kind of lay out and explain to you the structure. For some reason that now it minimized itself. At first that was open. I wasn't sure why. Now, what's cool about this is you have your readings. It's always the same format every week. There's media. So if I have any bonus materials like videos or websites that you can use in your discussion posts, just click on that. I really recommend the lecture for each of the weeks. Now, the bad news is, again, good and bad news. The good news is, you do it in 6 weeks. The bad news is, if you're going to watch the lectures, and I recommend it, it's about 2 hours of your work. Now, that makes sense because we're compressing everything in the summer. So you'll just click on that. It's a YouTube video that you'll watch here, and I will take you through all the material in that particular chapter or topic areas. It doesn't always align with chapters, but it somewhat does as far as the topics. Again, the topics are listed here. What is anthropology? History of anthropological ideas, and then in 1B, culture. So it was one reason I wanted to do the 1A, 1B. It's the first time I'm doing it this way. I wanted to do it this way because I thought it's going to make the most sense to keep these topics organized neatly for you in this A and B structure. So what I recommend is I would do 1A and 1B separately. That's just me. I would maybe start the week with doing 1A like on a Monday or Tuesday. And then as you get towards, the end of the week, again, things are going to be due fairly quickly, particularly week 1. By the way, no makeups will be allowed except for medical reasons, and I have to verify with the doctor's note. But you need to just really get the work done. So however that's going to happen in this class, the most productive way, whether it's your calendar, putting in your iPhone, putting sticky notes on the fridge or the microwave, whatever you need to do that, because I'm not going to in week 2, hey, could you reopen the assignment for me? I'm not going to do that because we're in a 6-week term, and part of the challenge of this is to see if you can do all that material in this amount of time. So I'm not going to be doing makeups for reasons like I didn't know the due date, etc. Again, the due dates are very clear on the syllabus. They're in the modules. They're on all these tabs. Look right here, July 11. I always do 5 p.m. For the due dates, so that's the time. This tells you exactly what's due for the week. So what I recommend is start with the 1A, then move to 1B. And what you're going to do is click on the quiz. The quiz will be 10 multiple choice questions, open book, very, I would say, easy. You can go back to the material and look for it in the textbook or if it references the lecture. I also, in the first week, want you to do an introduction discussion, and then you're going to do discussions, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. So again, the quizzes are fairly straightforward. Those are all multiple choice quizzes. They're not tricky. So don't read these questions and think he's trying to trick us. They're really not meant to be tricky. So what I recommend is go through all this material in the order. So do 1A, then maybe second part of the week, start on 1B. That's just so you don't confuse the material. There's generally some overlap, of course, between topics in any class, and certainly in anthropology. It's kind of like cumulative knowledge. Once you learn about anthropological ideas, you move on to culture, then you move on to field work and so forth. So there's a natural flow or progression to this class in terms of how I've set things up. So I think before I talk about discussions, I'll just kind of mention again, this is the structure. Again, you start on week 2, and it always has the dates here, so you can kind of easily remember that. I actually have a calendar that I set up in, I use this for all my classes actually, just to try to remember things. So I have a calendar. This is actually for the fall quarter when we start in 2025, and I'll have the weeks listed out here just to make it clearer for me when I have deadlines or other things like that. So if you want to do a structure like that over the summer quarter, you can do that. Print out a calendar, use the Canvas calendar, however you want to approach it. So again, through each week, so week 1, which you'll look at the dates as far as the due dates, is that first week of the quarter. Then you go into week 2, which includes A and B. Week 3 includes A and B. Week 4, A and B. Same thing with 5. Then when we get to 6, it's a little bit different. I have it compressed. So for week 5, you're going to have things due on the particular date. And then you want to look at week 6. It's very much compressed. For week 6, some good news. No discussions. Again, I recommend the modules because you can immediately see that for week 10. Under the normal quarter, that would be week 10. It's week 5 and B. So I'm clearly still using that structure of 12 weeks. So quiz 10 would be typically week 10. Quiz 10 is week 5B here in the summer. It's a little bit confusing, but we'll get the hang of it. So the good news is for week 5, you still have to do your typical quiz and your 2 discussions. And in a second, pay attention to what the A and B discussion is, because that's fairly important, different from these quizzes. But in week 6, you don't have discussions. You'll have 2 things due in week 6. I want you to read everything as you can, time permitting. But you'll have a quiz due. And again, the date's going to be listed here. And then a final quiz. What is the final quiz? It's going to be a series of 8 questions. They're worth 5 points apiece, so 40 points for that. They are very general. They cover the whole class. It's open book again, so you can use the book. And it will say something like, ethnocentrism is A, the viewpoint that your culture is superior to others, B, the viewpoint that you should tolerate other cultures, C, D. There's just 4 choices. And of course, that would be A, ethnocentrism is a viewpoint that you think your culture is superior to all other cultures in the world. So there will be 8 multiple choice questions worth 5 points each. Again, you have a ton of time to work on this. There'll be 1 short answer. And as a hint on the short answer, it's going to be something like, what's one concept you learned from this class? And it'll be like a short answer, 50 words. Don't use AI on it. Okay, again, I will give a 0 on that. It's worth 10 points if there's AI in there. I don't want a definition. I want Scott's view on something he learned about in this class. Okay, so that's going to be your final exam. It's actually super easy. It's 50 points, so it's intended to kind of boost your grade at the end. I don't want to say it's extra credit, but it's almost the equivalent of it because it has a very easy approach to it. There's nothing stressful. It's not a final project. You're not doing something that requires any research. You don't have to ever do citations in this class or anything like that. We're not going to write research papers. The writing component is typically going to be in your class discussions. Okay, so as we look at the discussions here, I think the best approach is when you get to the weekly discussion to click on that. And you can click on it on these tabs, but again, through the module structure, it's just super easy and quick. So you're going to do 2 per week. You have to do 2 posts. I'll tell you what a post is in each of the 1A or the B. So for each week, there's an A and a B. So you have to do discussion A, discussion B for each week. And the reason for that is I want to spread it into the 2 main areas, the A and the B for that week, since you're doing quizzes and readings and lectures in the A and the B. That covers really 2 weeks of material in 1 week. So as an example, you're going to click on 1A, and I'll have the information at the top for you. And what you're going to do here, it says here, submit 2 discussions for the week in A and B. Each is 200 words minimum. I'm going to suggest possible topics here, and it's 40 points total for the week. So it's 10 points each for 4 discussions. 2 in A, 2 in B. You can't do 4 in A and 0 in B, or you can't do 3 in A and 1 in B. It has to be like symmetrical. A and B, 2 and 2. So easy to remember. This again is telling you information about please do not use AI, definitions, lists. I really want you to have a conversation with us in the class. So discussion post is your viewpoint on material in the class. Now, one thing that I have not done yet because I'm still setting up this new class is when you log into this, you're going to see starting in the first week of this summer quarter, a slew of topics that are already listed here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to just put in generic topics right here, and then you can reply to that. What I would recommend is if you're replying, you want to click reply under the thread, what we call a threaded discussion, if that topic is already listed. So if for week whatever we're talking about cultural relativism, don't reply at the top of the board, which is a brand new topic, if that topic already exists as a preset discussion that I put in there, or that one of your classmates put in there as far as a topic to consider. Again, this is not going to look like this. The top will look the same, but this will have a series of topics. If you want to reply to that topic, hit reply and then give your opinion, your impression. I love examples. I love illustrations. Like one time I was traveling in China and I experienced this in terms of food or language or customs or folkways, whatever. So the discussions are really your place to engage with the material, to show what you learned, to have conversations with your classmates. Please keep the conversations friendly. Typically, we don't run into issues with this, but if something's political, sometimes we talk about race or ethnocentrism, and it gets very tricky. We're living in the U.S. here in the 2025, kind of in a new period in terms of where cultural tolerance is not the thing, I would say, politically at the highest levels of this country and the government. Very challenging. We see this worldwide, actually, in a lot of places, Brazil, Europe, Russia, really, unfortunately, across the planet, we're seeing a lot of this happening in terms of these kind of sentiments against outsiders, sentiments against culture, sentiments against other groups. And it's disturbing to say the least, and hard to teach anthropology kind of in this worldview or cosmology that we somewhat exist in right now. And I say somewhat because we don't often agree with these ideologies and perspectives spouted by people that claim to have the population, the populist, viewpoint of us in mind when they're spouting off their hatred and bigotry and so forth. So at very challenging times, I will say, but more importantly, we should use anthropology to kind of get through these times, to quote Noam Chomsky, the idea of intellectual self-defense, to better be able to understand the world and to adapt to it, and to hopefully spread some peace and tolerance and love and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a good place to end this video. I didn't want it to go on too long. If you get stuck, please ask me questions. The best way to contact me, I have my email on the syllabus, but is to go to your inbox right here on Canvas. I'm trying to look for my inbox. It's actually here. It might be different on your Canvas site depending on how things are laid out. But ask me a question. Again, I want this summer class to be meaningful and fun. I typically will check the class discussion boards daily just to get a sense of what people are talking about. I'll give my responses. I will respond to your quizzes, to any of the assessments in the class. And again, I'm here to help facilitate your learning in this class this summer term. So good luck here in Cultural Anthropology, Anthro 102 here at Lake Tahoe Community College. Don't hesitate to reach out when and if questions come up. Good luck, and I'll talk to you all soon.